We're trying a new setup. So welcome to True Health Tuesdays, and the truth will set you free. The truth now is disturbing, okay? Over the next month, in January, we're going to talk about different aspects and expand on this. But at this season, the end of the year, we have to talk about what's coming up in the future. And now, if you're completely into the media, you realize that Channel 2, Channel 4, and Channel 7 are your direct link to truth, that the government officials have your best interest in mind, and trust them, okay? We have to look at the rest of the world, okay? The rest of the world is going to hell in a handbasket quickly. If you look at the Middle East, okay, Yemen, we're looking at Syria, we're looking at all of these different disruptions of our planet. And it's because we've been living in an infinite existence in a finite world. And we're going to go through a lot of the different signs. But what we need to do is just be prepared. But also, you have to look at something different, okay? That your life isn't going to be the same. And if you prepare for it now, and it's really the unknown that scares people, but I'm going to make that unknown a little bit more clear. And you're going to see there's going to be patterns to either the collapse. It could be economic, it could be war, it could be government control. And you'll see that we're losing a lot of our freedoms because we are in a certain phase. Now, whether the events are going to be man-made because of stupid governance of our Earth, or natural because our planet is going through a transitional phase, what we can be sure is that there's going to be a variety of things happening. There's a tremendous amount of earthquakes going on. There's a change in the Arctic. There's financial, it's just crazy. So what happens? What would happen? Like, let's say, because we're about an hour away or an hour's drive away from Los Angeles, 14 million people in Los Angeles. One good earthquake, knocking out the water. Okay, you got 14 million people without a good storage of water. Okay, they have about 3 days worth of food on the shelves. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to get together, light a campfire, and sing Kumbaya. No. I mean, we can look at Bosnia, we can look at Venezuela, we can look at all of the different places that there's been a massive change in infrastructure. And so what would you do? I mean, if you have an automatic garage door, do you know how to disconnect it? Okay, do you have a way to use lights? Do you have an alternative to a cell phone? Do you have an alternative like candles or batteries or flashlights? Do you have any food lined up? So this is like a wake-up call to the 14 million people in LA, but also to look at what your community is. Look at it in a little bit different area. Now, societies, it's called socio-demographic cycles. And there's a number of different sociologists that have a huge amount of data. And you've gone back because we're not the first culture the world's ever seen. We're talking Greek, Roman. They've all went through certain cycles. At China, you're looking at 3,000 years of civilization. Cycles, and you can correlate this. And if you look at the cycles, the patterns are repeatable. And so they're predictable. So we don't have to be lost like, holy hell, what the heck are we going to be doing? Now, look at this band, okay? Small, independent, self-sufficient communities. Okay, think of like a monastery. Okay, they're sufficient, they're doing whatever they can. They're producing farm goods, they're fishing, they're doing something, but they're self-sufficient. They satisfy their needs. But is it safe and viable in one small community? Yeah, it could be, but if the communities join, then you have the increased production, you can start to expand, there could be more security. Okay, there's a lot of benefits to banding together. So the scenario is small independent communities, a group of men or one individual joins them together, forms a good community, okay? Now, what's neat about this You find the advantage of bringing all of your assets together in a community. And these assets, you start to have abundance, where instead of just growing potatoes for yourself, you can grow enough potatoes for 20 people, and you could use this for trade. Then you start to build infrastructure. Since you have more people, you have more free time, so you can start to build aqueducts or road systems, or, just the infrastructure that takes to start to build perhaps bigger communities or cities. The challenge with this is then you're looking for security, because when you have more assets, people are going to be going after it. So you have to develop a tax base, and the tax base is going to be funding these infrastructures and increasing the security of the military. Does that make sense? Then you have the golden age. You've got this like balance of where you've got a ton of assets. The people are all excited. They're no longer living in separate communities. They can identify with a group. So now they start to build the Parthenon, or they start to build, these great edifices to honor their efforts that they're putting forth now. Fantastic. And then they might get an idea like, let's do a little bit more conquest. Let's attack this area. Let's expand our borders because we need more protection. Sounds kind of Roman, doesn't it? Okay, and so except you're expending a lot of energy and effort on the building products, okay, on the building projects. You're building the Parthenon. You're building the Acropolis. You're building all these infrastructures. And when you look at Greece, and particularly when they were coming out of the Golden Age, they didn't have enough money to fund the projects. So instead of minting silver coins, they started to make cheaper metals in with it. So instead of having a real silver, a real hard currency, they had a fake currency, but because it had the stamp of the government on, it was valued more. So it was beyond the precious metal. So with this, with the expenditure of a lot of government officials, you would elect people that are going to promise you things, yes? Yes. Let's make California great again. Okay? Yeah, right. Okay, so you look at this, and so you're living in an infinite expansion in a finite world. This is when there's problems, because there's not enough money to build the road system or pay for taxes or build the bridges. No, I am talking about America, you're right. Okay? We don't have enough. Our infrastructure is failing. The water is being toxified. Okay, we have poisonous water. We've been spraying pesticides and glyphosates, doing monocrop productions. So we're right in this phase of we're seeing a massive decline. Anyone know about a time, now this is within my lifetime, where one person would go to work, earn money, and come back home and have the other person at the home taking care of the kids and everything else. And then they would save for college for the kids, and they would have plenty of retirement, and they would go on vacations. Have you heard of this? That was called a one-income family. Yeah, it wasn't just leave it to beaver. Okay, that went way by the wayside, okay, because again, inflation, okay, would go up because we no longer have control of our currency since, Wilson gave it over to the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve that prints our money, because remember, in Greece, they ran out of silver. So they started to mix cheaper metals in there. So the coin was actually worth less, okay, but it was traded like it was worth more because it had that cool picture on it. Does anybody ever remember the pictures of people bringing wheelbarrows in Russia of millions of rubles in order to buy a loaf of bread? Okay, well, that's what our money is. It's an idea. It's an idea that has a made-up value. Okay, so when you come up to this, we have a problem. Okay, then you have this infinite expansion in a finite world. So the government is promising all of this stuff. The economy is not able to produce it, so the infrastructure fails. Now, when you look at America, and you can go through and correlate this with just about every empire that's been around, Ottoman Empire, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, all the empires, it has the same pattern, Right now, we have a very sick population. It's completely overextended. Our gross, it's about $22 trillion or $21 trillion in debt. And that's a bummer, because that's a bummer of a number, because the debt that we have is now greater than what we produce. Now, this is going on around the world. So the paper money that we have is completely valueless in a few years when the governments lose control. So what we're seeing now is a collapse of the system. We're starting to see money shortages, food shortages, medical care, that's a big deal. That's starting to be short. We know that by 2020, and that's just in 2025, that's in 6 more years, that 1 in 2 children will have autism. We know 54% of our offspring have a chronic illness or disease, so they will not be paying into the system. We know that the autistic tsunami is going to hit. And I'm just talking about healthcare. I'm not talking about food production. Okay, we have a big problem with food production as well, because the food is poisonous. So what happens is it becomes chaos. Now, in the next couple of years, you're going to see major challenges with infrastructure, major challenges with finance, major challenge with food production, okay? And if you're ready for it, it's okay. If you're not, it's going to be a disastrous situation because chaos results. Chaos, people are going to be fighting for themselves, and you can't do that. We have to join together as a community. If you look at these, the preppers in Bosnia, the preppers in Venezuela, the ones that had that, you know, their years worth of food, they had all the ammunition, they had all the water. Guess what? They were taken over, okay, by other people. The only way we survive is by understanding there's a pattern and we form a cohesive group. We have to get in that small self-sufficient community. So out of the chaos, these small self-sufficient communities are formed. Okay, but we have to realize that we're living in a planet that has certain limitations. It has, I mean, unlimited potential, but it has certain limitations in resources and everything else that we're going to utilize. Does that make sense so far? So this is it. Yeah, we got the sunny face in the middle. Okay, small independent communities join together, build infrastructure, expand too much, okay, promise too much, and they don't think about what's going to happen in the future. They used to say, any decision you make, think 7 years or 7 generations down the road. Because if you're buying that giant, massive gas-guzzling car, and you're going to the ATM every time you need to get cash, and you go to the supermarket and figure that's where your food is, and you're buying the food that's been shipped across the ocean because it's wintertime up here, and we're getting fresh oranges from Chile, that's not just cost prohibitive, it's not good for the planet. If you're going in to get that 99-cent pound of hamburger, knowing that's a ground up dairy cow that's been fed a tremendous amount of bovine growth hormone, and so it has antibiotics and growth hormone in there, it's actually toxic to your system, but it's very cheap. You're supporting an industry that's damaging the planet. Do you know what I mean? So in order to have that small community mentality, because that's what we're going back to, you have to know where your food's coming from, what's involved in it. Is it the best thing for the planet, not just for you? Does that make sense? Because we are now in the exhausting resources, bankrupt economy, bankrupt government, and bankrupt morals. The World Health Organization says non-communicable diseases, these are diseases you can't give each other, you got to catch from toxic food, medication, lack of activity, lifestyle choices, and we're trusting a medical system that's completely dysfunctional. In fact, it's so dysfunctional that you can't, the New England Journal of Medicine is saying, for God's sake, don't go for your annual physical, and there's an inverse relationship spending money on this system and your health. So all of these diseases, what are they from? If they're from lifestyle, how could we be that sick? I mean, if you look at this, a concentrating animal feeding operation. Now, We're going to go through over the next month and talk about how to clean water, what to use for currency, what to use for barter, how to use things for communication, okay, how to handle waste, how to get water out of just anything, how to filter stuff. I mean, you know, every aspect that you need to protect your community and your family. But we have to do this together. We can't do it individually. This is psychotic. If you raise an animal, okay, in a concentrating animal feeding operation, you're torturing this little creature, and whatever your value system is, you know, eating a tortured animal is going to make the meat not palatable. There's going to be certain toxins in the animal product. This is why, you know, you're paying so much for range-free, grass-fed, hormone-free. Now, the majority of our agriculture is built to feed these creatures. Okay, so we have a tremendous amount of land that's being toxified because it's a monocrop, and then we're spraying it with glyphosates. It's completely psychotic. I mean, you're not going to get E. coli, which is an intestinal bacteria, in romaine lettuce, okay, unless someone's pooping on the lettuce. Okay, so these massive feeding operations, they're not having time, and they don't have the facilities to process the raw sewage, so they're just spraying it on open fields. I mean, it's crazy. We cannot live like this. So do not support this type of injury. Now, remember, we're in the chaos phase right now. So you're going to see the government cracking down. Why? We're going to see martial law. Certain rules and laws are restrictive. So we have Argentina, because when you look at the Healthy People 2020 in America, okay, we know now that you no longer have rights over your children or rights over your own body. If you're in California and you work at a hospital or you want your children to get an education, you are forced to get a vaccine. There's no longer informed consent. And it's to an industry that you cannot even sue if their product damages you. So it's a liability-free industry that you're forced to get it. Now, by 2020, they're going to force you to get, some people say 2025, so I might be off a couple of years, but to get your adult vaccines, okay, to get a driver's license, or to file your taxes, or to get an identity card. And now, if anybody like me was in the 60s doing love-ins and stuff, you know, where, you know, peace, love, you know, our rights, you know, was fighting to stop the war in Vietnam, you might think that's crazy. If I told you 8 years ago that they'd be forcing vaccinating and that parents would willingly give up their rights because it's those unvaccinated people that are the danger. You know, I mean, it's just such a bizarre, psychotic event. And I'll tell you right now, if you haven't had a vaccine in 10 years, you're part of the unvaccinated. So this is the example they're going to use. Argentina just passed a law that said in order to virtually live in this country, drive a car, get a national ID, you have to have your vaccines up to date. And I love and you're going to hear a lot of this on the road, okay, or on the TV media. By vaccinating, you not only protect yourself, but also those groups for some reason that can't be vaccinated. So if you're not being vaccinated, you're not doing what you should be doing as a good citizen. Do you understand? No. Oh, wait. There's no German reference here. You understand how crazy this is? Luckily, there's still some sanity. Colombia, okay, said it's unconstitutional to force people to do medical procedures that they don't want. I mean, listen to these bunch of wackos. The state cannot make decisions regarding to the bodily integrity of its citizens because to do so would violate human dignity. Okay, psychotic and crazy, normal. Okay, so this is what we got. There's people in the world that are not crazy and psychotic. Okay, there's actually ways to do it. So people are going to say, yeah, make America great again. You know, we got a president that's going to build a wall and wall us off. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, how great is America? We're 34th in children living in poverty out of 35 countries. Our country is in deep trouble. If you're only getting your information through the media, you have false data. the percentage of people living below the poverty line in the U.S. And when you look at it, what they're doing with the numbers is insane. Since most of the seniors are getting Social Security now, a system that they paid into that will be dysfunctional and completely bankrupt in 5 years, okay? So that's going to be more of a challenge, yes? Yes. The government owns $21 trillion, and the debt is going up. Why? Because they don't need to watch it. They print more money. Okay, the Federal Reserve, which is not a federal organization, it's a private group of banks, prints these symbols on paper. It's actually cloth, but they print it on there, and they call it paper money. And they give that to the governments and to the banks, and they distribute it out through loans. So it's going in, it's high. Now, where's this $21 trillion? Well, I got to tell you, our government's buying a lot of it. Social Securities buys it, the Federal Reserve, mutual funds, banks, but about a third of this $21 million, okay, so you're talking about, or $21 trillion, about $7 trillion is owned by other countries. Why? Because America for years has been the main, the main transaction currency. And you'll see this, that Nixon back in the 70s took us off the gold standard and tied it to the petroleum. So we said, hey, Saudis, come on over here, man. How about you guys trade all your oil in dollars, you know? That'll be kind of nice. So we'll have a bunch of dollars circulating around, rating around there, and it'll have good value. And, you know, our currency will be it. Well, that's not working too well anymore. Moscow unloaded $87 billion of the Treasury bonds. Japan got rid of a bunch. Turkey got rid of a bunch. So they're starting to look down the road and they're seeing, hey, maybe these pieces of paper with US on it might not be a really good investment for many more years. In the old days, like post-World War II, we were pretty much, you know, the going game, okay, in the Northern Hemisphere. Everyone else was devastated by war, but we had the industry. So most of the international transactions were the US currency. Now we're down to 39%. And you could look at some of the politics, and this is going to just drive some people crazy, but some people say that the reason we invaded Libya is because Gaddafi decided to use his own currency, an African currency, to trade Libyan oil. We can't have other independent people thinking for themselves. Okay, I'm sure there were other reasons as well. But here, now has anyone ever owned a house, got loans on it, had it increase in value, then the economy went out from underneath it? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, anybody over 12? Okay, because you're going to see this. I mean, you know, the first house I had, I built it when I was 21 off a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, okay? This is what you do when you have no friggin' money, okay? And it was 2 points above prime, and prime was 12%, and here it is, it's 1981. It goes up, then it goes up, and it's like, damn, I got all this equity. Then you take the equity out, then the value goes down in a couple of years. Damn, I owe a bunch more on this. Where'd the equity go? Then you wait 10 more years and it's back up to where it was before, and you just barely make the debts off. Okay, so the cycle has been going through many, many times since the 80s. Okay, this is a crazy cycle. Well, this is going to happen again. However, Chairman of the White House Council on Economic Advisors says there's going to be a $10 trillion drop in home assets in the next few years. 10 trillion. That means all of these homes that are valued at a certain amount of paper dollars, because remember, the paper dollars only have the value of the paper. They're backed by a company or a country that's absolutely dysfunctional in its responsibilities to its citizens for food, clothing, and shelter. It's going to drop $10 trillion. Okay, so this means the home assets. That's going to be a bigger challenge. Okay, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because they are just pieces of paper. We use them as trade and barter. So understanding that, we have to come up with some other things. When we look at it, the financial operators are racking up profits, okay, because they're releasing cheap money and they're issuing trillions of dollars of debt. See, when you're the Federal Reserve, you have, say, $100 million, okay? And you give it to the government. Well, you don't give it to them. You loan it to them. Okay? Now, these are just pieces of paper with certain value. So you're giving them debt. Okay? Now, the challenge with this is we're also doing it to other countries, and this is why the world debt is in deep shit trouble. So let's say that you run, Uruguay, or you run Peru, or you run some other country, and the World Bank is going to come down and say, "Bam, you got a lot of great assets, buddy. You got beaches, you got some minerals. Hey, if you're Venezuela, you got 20% of the world's oil reserves, so this is pretty good. I'm going to make you some loans. I'm going to give you some cash right now." All this stuff is in the ground. It's going to take a lot to get out of there, but your country is worth a lot, so here, take these loans. Let's go to Greece and loan them some more money. Okay, so this is what happens. So the countries get it just like we would on a home equity loan. You get this cash and you think, wow, this is great. We can build our infrastructure, support our family. Can you see this part of the cycle of societies? And so then the economies and infrastructure gets built. However, you owe this money. You didn't work on getting all the assets out. You haven't worked at paying off the debt. So the level of global debt is $325 trillion, 3 times more than the global domestic production. Remember, $21 trillion, it just about matches. It's about a little bit over 100% of our national production. Okay, and when you're right around 100%, it's not comfortable, but at least it's not psychotic. Okay, it's like having an 18-year-old with a $1,000 credit card. That can be really friggin' dangerous, yes? What if that 18-year-old had a $100,000 credit card? That is psychotic. So what we're looking at is the global debt is 3 times what the globe makes. So this is not sustainable. And so now, we're going to go over just basics. Food and water. That's it. Realize that it is not going to go on this way. Social Security will not be there. Healthcare is up to you. Electricity, food, water, clothing, shelter, for certain periods of time are also going to be up to you. These are good examples of food. Patriot Supply, you can get 3 months worth of supply for under $700, and it lasts for around 20 years. And we're going to go through the different types of food sources, how it's stored, how long it lasts. Most canned foods are good for long after their expiration date, but we're going to look at the cheapest way to do it. What I like is the seeds. The seeds are amazing. That's a 21-pound, 5-gallon bucket, and it produces over 100 pounds, 150 pounds of food. Okay, and if you have a place that you're stationary, okay, that has soil and water and sunlight, you can take those sproutable seeds and grow plants. Growing plants is amazing. And that's only $149. So, would it be worth it to have 150 pounds worth of sprouts, okay, for $150 that can keep you and your family going for a little bit? Does that make sense? It's simple. Sproutpeople.org is a good site. 2 ounces of seeds will net 1 to 2 pounds of food. Is that a good, it's called ROI, return on investment. It is, and you can get organic, plant-based, normal, tons of energy. This is really simple stuff. Now, what can you get, okay, for a water source? Let's say your water's shut down. Okay, if your water is, let's say you have a warning. Okay, there's just been a massive earthquake, LA water system is shut down, you're only going to have water for 3 hours, fill certain containers. Fill your bathtub, okay? Okay, that's a good one. But also the back of a toilet, not where the dog licks, okay? I'm talking the back where you lift that thing up. Okay, unless you have some of those toilet bowl cleaners, that's also fresh water. If you go to the water heater, when you first turn the spigot on the bottom of the water heater, rusty water is going to come out. That's okay. That's just a lot of particulate matter that's settled in there. Put it in a bucket. Typically it'll settle down and there'll be some drinkable water on top. Or you can filter it out. We're going to talk about ways to filter it. But these are water sources that are just there. If you look at the front of the house, you're going to see a water shutoff valve. Okay, when water is shut off from the city, shut it off to your house. Now you have all the water in the pipes. Okay, you're talking, it could be 20 gallons. So these are water sources. If you have, some good containers, if you have anything that's made for water storage, great. But everybody has this stuff at their house or their apartment or something. Okay, so there is water sources available. Food harvesting. Last time, me, Michael, and Danny, when we were kayaking, this was about 8-10 years ago, we're kayaking in front of Pismo Beach, and the guide goes in there and says, "I'm hungry." He reaches down, picks up a hunk of seaweed, breaks it off, and chews on it. And I thought, how cool. Okay, you could actually eat seaweed. Now, seaweed is also, it can be a magnet for toxins, so don't get it around drainage ditches. Get it kind of in the lower ocean in an open area. But there's a lot of different food sources around here. And the next few series, we're going to cover how to find this stuff, how to get it. But I would recommend, instead of, going through your local park hunting for squirrels, get some freeze-dried food now. Because if you ever tried to kill a squirrel, cook a squirrel, eat a squirrel, and skin a squirrel, it's a lot of effort for a little reward there.
Rat.
Yeah, rats are fun too. So what you're going to need, okay, and you just need certain skills, okay? You got to look at food and where to acquire it. Water, you're looking at about 1 gallon a day per person. Transportation, if there's any type of electronic problem, most of the cars with electronic ignitions or like the automatic door locks, those aren't going to be usable. So look for a bike, look for shoes. You may have to walk a lot. So if you have good, solid shoes, clothing, protection, all the standard stuff that you're going to need if you're going to hike for 20 miles. Some type of shelter, portable shelter. Waste management, we're going to cover all of this stuff. First aid, I'm going to show you how to make your own colloidal silver, which is an antimicrobial. I'm going to show you how to utilize your waste for fertilizer and how to keep it sanitary so you're not going to get your family sick. And protection, stuff that's non-lethal. Man, you spray somebody with a little bit of bear spray, they're not going to be your friend. It's going to be perfect. But you can get pepper spray. There's a lot of things that you can do, because having a deadly weapon has protection is really a challenge, because you're going to be afraid to use it and the other person may be afraid, afraid also. So we're going to go look up non-lethal alternatives, which would be like way nicer. But look at the area that you're living in. And this is a trip. This is going to be expanding your mind. If you look at Huntington Beach, where we live, it's an island. You cannot get to Huntington Beach unless you go over or under a bridge. Okay, there's a river on one side, ocean on the other, another river on the other side. So if all of the overpasses and underpasses collapsed in one day from some, good 9, 10-point earthquake, okay, how do we get around? What do? We have 4 days worth of food. All the water has been shut off. What do you do? So look at your community wherever you're at now. If you're in Chicago, like I got a lot of buddies up there, it's cold. You better have a heat source, otherwise you're going to be, because you can freeze to death in your house. What if you're in the Midwest? What if you're down south? Just prepare. Know that if there's any problem, you got a minimum interruption of 4 to 5 days and a maximum of 2 to 3 months. Okay, so it just makes sense that you get together and look around your area. What is available? But imagine if every overpass and underpass and all the electricity, all the power, all the water, all the fuel was gone. Would you and your family be able to pool together resources and survive? Yeah. And don't just say, yeah, I got my shotgun. Oh yeah, get some food. I don't need to store it. Yeah, that ain't going to work. Okay? The peacemakers are going to be honored. Okay? We're going to rebuild this world in a lot kinder, gentler version. So here's the key, what we can do now. This is also the plan to build a society that's going to actually freaking work. Okay? We're not going to repeat this cycle again. We're going to clean up the food system. That means local, sustainable, healthy food. Not the 99-cent cheeseburger, with the glyphosate soaked, and this is going to cause inflammation of the arteries. And then you have doctors suggesting that you add cholesterol medications in with the condiments because the meal is so freaking poisonous. Have you heard of that? Yeah, there's actually doctors saying let's mix cholesterol-lowering drugs in the condiments because the burgers are too toxic. I heard this and I go, oh my God. I'm glad the world is changing just for that note alone. So look at it. Do we need crop rotation? Do we need to have, if you look at the difference between an organic and a commercial farm, organic farms grow soil. They have rich nutrients in the soil. They have probiotics they put in the soil. Look at the Korean farming method. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's such a harmonious one-on-one relationship with the earth. And these are the decisions we have to make. So it's not just massive food production to feed the concentrating animal food operations or to get cheap food for everyone. Look at where it's grown. The quality is going to be way better. Clean up healthcare. Okay, that means it's care of your health. And we don't have that. If you looked at the Affordable Care Act, which is a pig pile of bullshit, it's a medical reimbursement system. It has nothing to do with health. There's no outcomes there. So if you get flu shot and get Guillain-Barré, and that flu shot is about 10% effective over some of the viruses, but there is a lot of toxic effects on it. If you look at the flu shot, just the flu shot alone, it's 40% of all the vaccines. It's 60% of all the reported damages. And no one's talking about giving out vitamin D3 or vitamin C or telling people, look, get a sun lamp. There's no correlation between the psychotic medical system that's disease-based, that's looking at what do you have? What's your diagnosis? What's your blood test like? A blood test is only 10 to 15% of a diagnosis, no matter what. I mean, it's such a dysfunctional system between the outcome and the system. So we're going to clean it up. We're talking independent research. We're going to bring back real science. Okay, we're going to look at longevity and vitality. When you sit down to a doctor's not going to say, okay, what kind of prescription do you want? They're going to say, how are your bowel movements? Are you sleeping through the night? I'm not going to give you a drug to alter your physiology because that's poisonous. What I'm going to do is instruct you in the care of the human frame, how your body works, give you the appropriate nutrients, and tell you how to deal effectively with your physical, chemical, and emotional stress load. And your body's going to thrive in this world. The medical system will not be trained by the pharmaceutical industry. The environment. We have to live in harmony with the environment. We can't keep pulling out oil out of the ground or burning coal or anything else. We got enough out here. We can work on tides. We can work on solar. We can work on wind. There's a lot of different energy sources out there that can meet our needs. Politics. Imagine, because there has to be a bureaucracy when we start having community. What if we told them, you guys have to balance your budget? If not, you're fired. We do. Does anybody say, look, dude, I paid 11 months on all of these bills. I want a month off. I want a raise even though we're screwing up. We're in Congress, I mean, this is psychotic. So absolute term limits, and then our military. What about our military? How about if it was 100% defensive? 100%. So there's no military bases around the world that drains the economy. No, I'm not talking about Greece right now. Okay, I'm talking about psychotic America. This is draining our coffers, but we're doing it to keep up the people that are trying to keep up our petrodollars or the heroin supply from Africa or from Afghanistan. I mean, we're doing this for crazy reasons. So increased local control. So all the money we save by wiping out the big government, by doing all of this stuff, we can put in the infrastructure, having crop rotation, helping the soil, getting fresh water, okay, building power plants that work on sunlight or wind, or I mean, all the other things that we can do. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So we're talking basic, this is a good plan. Why? Because if you utilize this, what's life like 7 generations from here? It's called better. Okay, we can work up an actual exchange, okay, not worthless paper money with cool pictures on it, but something that has value. We can do services, we can do barter system, we can work up something that actually works. Does that make sense? Now we're going to cover all of this stuff. We're going to cover all of this stuff coming up over the next few weeks. So I wanted to give you an overall view because there are challenges that are going to be coming up. You can call it an economic shift, you can call it a redistribution of wealth, you can call it holy shit, chaos, my God, what the hell are we going to do? Or look at it as a rebirth and awakening of a system that's completely dysfunctional. Because right now, if you're really happy with the way everything's are going, go to Target or Walmart and look at the kids and people that are suffering. This is a sick, hurt population, and it doesn't need to be. You're looking at wild animals in captivity that are dying. They're dying in captivity, even though they don't know it. They're going to the job that they don't have satisfaction, joy, or support, and they're going home to where they're fed by this TV unit that's telling them that this game show is the best. Then they're eating the microwave plastic food that says healthy choice on it, and then they're going to bed by taking their medications even though they're sick as all hell. Then they're getting up in the morning and having their breakfast bar or cereal, or going to Denny's for the Grand Slam, whatever the hell. Okay, they're toxifying their body. They're not having emotionally satisfying. They're not having rejoicing inside. They're in a whole different world that's not experiencing life. Okay, that world is not going to last. It's not sustainable, and it's a lie. Okay, we're going to actually change this world. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and I'm going to give you the plan. You can go to Extreme Health Academy. We got some webinars. Just did one webinar for them on Sunday, and it was really cool. Imagine asking questions, and some of them were just like amazing. But we talk about like prostate issues. We just had one guy had his prostate removed 8 years ago. Now his prostate specific antigen is through the roof, and the oncologist going, well, prostate's not there. That's not the problem. Oh, let's look at other stuff. There's other stuff we can cut out. It's like, dude, you haven't a friggin' clue at physiology. You don't know that cancer is a metabolic disease? It's like, my God. Anybody wants to save this healthcare system, please talk to me. I'll explain the defects. It'll take like an hour. The cruise is full up, but if you want to make it on there, it's still going to be fun. I mean, I don't know if we have room for you if you go on the cruise to go in the education area, but it would be really fun to hang out on the back deck, yes, with a Cuban cigar. And yes, I know this is extravagant. This is burning fossil fuel, and we're traveling across. I know it's our swan song. It's just going to be fun, and go to our site, because this has got all the information you can possibly want. Okay, and we're going to keep putting more and more. Okay, we got time for about 5 questions. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are we all going to have to move to the Midwest?
Are we all going to have to move to the Midwest? The Midwest, we have a number of people from the Midwest here right now. No, because the Midwest is going to be, there's ways to survive in almost every area on the planet. If you look, there's a really cool book I'm reading now called Before Grains. And what Aboriginal man would do is they would follow the herds. So in the summertime, they would spread this wild grain next to lakes and stuff, and they'd hike north, okay, where the animals would congregate. They would harvest the animals, and it would take 1 week of a guy with a stone tool to cut enough grains to last his family for a year. And it's like, really? That seems amazing. So they would just throw it on the ground and come back, and they knew when they would come back in the wintertime that the grains would be there and they'd harvest them. So the earth has such a richness, and that's one of the things that I appreciated, that it's really that easy. It's that easy to grow food and survive. Anywhere that you're going to set up is going to be okay, but look at infrastructure. So like if there's a nuclear plant close by, that might not be the best place to settle. Okay, if you're hoping that the Ogallala Aquifer in the Midwest is going to be okay, that's not. It's being poisoned by the glyphosates that are doing the runoff. Okay, so if you have certain water sources that are fresh, food sources, and sunlight, everything else, yeah, it's a great place. People have been living there for thousands of years. It's too far from the ocean for me.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But more dirt and less people.
More dirt and less people. Yeah, or dirty people. Okay, good. Next week, or actually, we're off the next 2 weeks, so happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year. Please be safe. But God bless y'all, and I love you.
Yeah, we have a lot to think about.